And what we're going to talk about today is very simplistic. Um, we're going into a new market. Life has opened up to a degree. You've been shut down for COVID for quite a while. And in turn, in the lockdown, there have been sales. There's no argument. There have been sales. But the sales that have occurred have been infrequent. One here, one there, one over there. Something sold in the north, something sold in the south, but there hasn't been a lot of data that you can accumulate. And most of your sales data right now is January, February, and into when we locked down in mid-March. And the question becomes, how do you price right now, predicated on a lack of data of the last couple of months? Because when I say lack of data, I'm talking about enough data. And the other thing is, what are you going to do come the fall market if when prices and everything else, the trends and how you're going to interpret it and everything else. So this is what we're going to talk about today. And it's that simple. So I'll tell you a little bit about myself. In August of this year, I'll be hitting I'll start my 53rd year in real estate. I came into real estate as a kid at 21. 1968. It feels like yesterday, and yet it feels like ancient history to me too. And in turn, I sold 100 houses in my very first year in real estate. I started in brand new houses, and within a couple of months, I realized the money was in resale. And I went right into the resale market, and I was selling $14,000 houses. I sold the first condos in the province of Ontario. I developed one of the first Chinese plazas in all of suburban Toronto, and I was renovating. I've been an appraiser and everything else. Many of you have probably on here have taken the accredited senior agent program, which I am the founder of, and I'm no longer teaching it. It's time for new blood. I've walked away and I'm not in control of the association anymore, but I'm proud to be the founder. And in turn, I am an active, this is not an academic exercise where some instructor comes in, sits down with you, tells you what you should know, and they haven't sold the house in 20 years. Last sale I did was in the last few days. I am an award-winning realtor. I'm in the trenches. I do this on a constant basis, and everything that I'm teaching here today is what I apply in my own business and help everybody else. I'm a RE/MAX Hall of Famer. I ran one of the largest appraisal firms in Ontario, and we were across in residential. We were all over, and I'm very familiar with Barrie and Aurelia because we were commercial appraisers, and we went across North America. So I've got battle scars because of this. I have survived 3 major crashes in real estate, and I've been broke. I was an investor. I got killed. I understand what's going on, what does go on, and what potentially can happen. We are not going to sit here today and talk about is a market falling? Is it rising? I'll get into that a little bit. I am not here to do predictions about the future. I don't have a crystal ball. I will say this to everybody who's listening and watching right this minute. We have never in our history ever been where we are today. This is a different model. We are sitting with something that was imposed upon us. It's not man screwing up the economy, a war, or something to that effect. So our reactions to it and everything else, we can't forecast because we've never been here. And where it's going to play out, it's going to play out. And I'm going to talk about the positives of real estate as we go. So what we have learned, we've had 4 major crashes in real estate since World War II. I started in '68, but there had been a downturn before I got into business. And that's interesting because I'm a kid, I come into real estate. I didn't know anything about a bad market before me. I just knew I was in real estate, I'd go make a living. And that's exactly what happens. As fresh people come in, they have no memory of the past. Therefore, they just go out and do the work. And it changes things and keeps things swinging. In the 70s, the government came in with the Ontario Land Speculation Tax. It killed real estate for a good 6 months. You couldn't give away a house. Then the 80s crashed and the 90s. Some of you may have been around in one or two of these crashes. Most of you, if you're under 45 or anywhere between 45 and 50 and you weren't in real estate in that period, you won't remember any of these. So the question becomes, how do we learn from the past about how to go into the future? And the future is now, it's year 2020. By the way, isn't it funny? December 31st, 2019, we were looking, this is going to be the greatest decade ever. 2020 is going to be fantastic. And it started fabulous. I mean, I was on a roll. You were on a roll. Things were going great. Great January, February, March, bang, we're doing great. And then the rug gets pulled out from underneath us. We're in lockdown. So this is what you cannot do right this minute. You cannot be the deer in the headlights. You can't be in a panic mode. You've got to get past this. I'm going to say this to you, and I'm not admonishing anybody, but it's a reality. The COVID lockdown was a benefit to a lot of realtors because we were all on equal playing field. It wasn't like you got sick and you were out of the game and the game was going on without you. The whole game shut down, with exception. I mean, some people, we made deals, but it was a learning experience. I have so many realtors that I help coach, and I don't coach, I just mentor certain people because I like to. And in turn, it was a great learning curve. There was so much information on YouTube and programs. You take your own Barrie and District Real Estate Board. Have you ever gone into the MLS system and clicked on every single icon and button and tutorial and mastered it? I mean, it's amazing how many agents I told the different boards, do you know your MLS system? And they've learned how to do certain stuff. I know for myself, I was missing a step in using DocuSign. I learned. So this is it was a good learning curve. So this is why people will have to sell. Ladies and gentlemen, no matter how bad a real estate market is, the worst of the worst of the worst times, there's the normal reasons why people have to sell, but now we are going to see other reasons. We have people that overpaid in a bidding war, and they're now caught. They don't have, maybe they've lost their job or their business, and they're heading into divorce. It's amazing about what I'm hearing about the marriage market, but I'm not going to go into that. A lot of people have excess mortgages. I spoke to a broker yesterday who tells me that they're getting powers of sale again, which they haven't seen in years, and their company is starting to handle them. People are being pressured because their credit includes not just the mortgage deals, but if they're in trouble with their mortgage, I guarantee you they haven't paid their credit cards, they're behind in their taxes, realty and Canada revenue, and there's a list. And then there's so much more we can add. So what is going to happen is there are a lot of reasons that have come out of COVID downturn that's going to force more people to sell. And you're going to say, well, who's going to buy? So here's where we are right now. Should I buy? Should I wait? Should I sell? You know real estate's doing phenomenal right now. You're in a burst, a bubble, a balloon that has occurred because of the shutdown. Everybody that had to buy couldn't. Now they're back and they're out there. And you, the ones that are listening in the Barrie, Aurelia, and expanded markets, you know what's happening. People are leaving Toronto. I have agent after agent in Toronto telling me, I am listing right now, all my listings, the people are leaving. They're leaving Toronto. And that was expected. And you know, they're going all over Ontario. I had a call from a personal friend who said, you grew up in Guelph? I go, yeah. He says, what's it like to live in Guelph? And I said, I left Guelph when I was a kid. I said, it doesn't count because when I left, it was 35,000. It was equal in size to Barrie at the time. I said to him, it's 135,000 now. It's got the 401. It's close to Toronto. It's almost a suburb. But he's now looking in Cambridge and Kitchener. And this is somebody who I never thought would leave Toronto. They're tired, they're leaving, and you're benefiting. And what we've got now, here's what happened in the last downturns. As soon as there was a hiccup in the market, I don't think there's too many of us here that aren't getting phone calls from buyers going, well, I know that people are going to be in trouble. I want to buy a property. I want to bargain. Geez, just what I need. You know, it's the old joke. I wish I had 20 clients like you instead of 500. There's so many bargain hunters out there thinking they're going to steal a property. And who knows, before the year's over, they may be right, but we don't know. I'm getting those phone calls. I got people now saying, I'm going to wait until the market falls more and then I'm going to buy. I go, well, fine, if that happens, wait, but I'll get back to you then. I'll keep you apprised until then. What's going to drive the markets is going to be price and the motivation of. There's the old story when you take the listing and you have to find out what is the motivation. And you walk into a house sometimes and you've got this, you feel it, something's off. You can see by the way the couple is talking and you realize they're going through a divorce. Or you see a nervousness and you realize they're one step ahead of their creditors. I mean, it's there. You got to smell it. You got to feel it. So with that said, here's where we are for this year. You've got comps for January, February, and into March. The blocked out time, you've got some sales, but you've got to understand a sandwich is not a banquet. A sale here and a sale there is not a trend. So your problem right now is how to price predicated on historic January, February, and March when you've got trends. Yes, sales are happening now. Yes, you can start using some of the data now, but you've got some gaps in the data for abundance, because if you're not fortunate enough to have a cookie cutter style of house, you may be in right now looking and going, oh my goodness gracious, I've got a property. Not a lot sells in this area because it's a demand area. People don't move unless they have to. And I got to come up with a value. And I've only got a December sale or I got a January sale, but I don't know what to do. So we're going to get into that in a minute, okay? So here's where the key months are going to be of 2020. These are the months that are going to decide the average of everything for all of 2020. As we get into the fall, why am I looking at this? If you listen to the experts, and I do, we could be in, as the weather gets colder, to a second wave of COVID. We have also, we're not immune to what goes on around the world. Other societies and other countries have opened up before us, and they're now seeing COVID cases increasing again, and they're talking about lockdowns again. I don't know about the rest of you. I would dread a second lockdown. I don't know how I'd handle it, but I don't have a restaurant business to go to or a barber shop, and I'm not in a wedding gown business. A lot of people can't recover if there's a second lockdown. They're hardly going to survive this one. So what about these months? We're now almost finished June. You've got sparse sales. July, probably going to have a good July. Up in Barrie you will, Aurelia and all through there, you're going to have a decent time as more and more Torontonians head up to you and people are moving around. August is going to be the strangest August we've ever had, because it's the first August where people are not taking off. School's not out, basically. Well, school is out, but we're not going to have people going on the kind of vacations they used to go on. Oh, they may go away for a week or two and road trips and everything, but traditional August is gone this year. And therefore, you could have more buyers running around this August than we've ever had in any other August in the last 30, 40 years. So I know I'm not getting on an airplane, and I'm sure a lot of you are saying, I'm not going to an airport and I'm not getting on an airplane this year. So that's our fears, and maybe it's our reality. But I think I speak for a lot of people. I was supposed to be on a cruise. I was supposed to be in Rome this year. They're not going to happen. So that's what August is going to be. So here's where we are. You don't have a big trail of data yet, and yet you are out and you have to price a property, and you're going, I don't have enough data here. There's not enough footprints in the snow. So here's the thing. If this guy is acting now, there's a Sherlock Holmes book, and I always have trouble finding this quote. And basically, Sir Conan Doyle, who wrote Sherlock Holmes, basically, I'm paraphrasing this, he basically said if you watch the actions of one person acting in madness, it is the analysis of a crazy person. But when a group of people act in madness, it is a trend. And we know that when we saw all the bidding wars over the years. I mean, really, how stupid is it that every offer is a way above asking price and people are acting in herd instinct? I mean, those of us that have been around a long time, this whole multiple offer thing that became such a whatchamacallit, a trend. People were acting in madness. So many people overpaid, and sometimes grossly. So here's our calendar perspective for the year. We don't know where we're going to be in July and August. By September, October, we should know where the market trends are. So let's look at you for 2020. Let's take the supposition you want to make $150,000. Your average deal, and I'm sorry, I was playing with numbers here, is $15,000 after everything. You make 15 grand per deal. 10 deals, $15,000. You need $12,500 per month. You with me so far? So therefore, if you look, you're going to have maybe only 8 active months or so in 2020, because you start off slow in January. You've been shut down a couple of months. You've got to build up again, everything else. So roughly, if you're lucky, you maybe have 9 months. You can play with my math. But 150,000 divided by 8 active months means 18,750 a month. You're minus $30,000. You've either got to go and do higher price deals, or you got to do a couple of more deals this year. So you can't afford. Why am I giving you these figures? The reason I'm giving you these figures is simple. It goes to show you haven't lost money in 2020. You've lost time. And the only way to make up for the time is either increase the sale price of the product you're selling or increase your numbers. At this moment, everything I'm talking to you about is you cannot afford to lose a listing now. But you do not take a listing for the sake of taking a listing. You only take a saleable listing because you want money in the bank. Here's the forecast for 2020. Some people are telling us it's going up. Some people are telling us it's going down. Some are saying sideways. The economists don't know a thing because they're all over the place. And here's your reality from the Barrie board. Please look at this carefully. This is 1991, after the crash of 1990. Look at the average sale price in 1991. It dropped considerably. And if you look, it kept dropping from the peak in 1990. It took years before people who bought 1990, sorry, it's a Guelph accent, comes out every now and then. In 1990, it took about 10 years, 8, 9 years, before the prices came back. But I want you to look at the red arrow. Look what happened when prices dropped. Sales increased every year thereafter. Now, you can argue with me, part of this is because Barrie, the population increased. And there's no argument. You have to factor that into the picture. But this is the beauty. As prices come down, more people can afford to buy. And therefore, you've got a bonus to us as the realtor. I personally do not want to see human misery. In the 80s, the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s, believe me, there were suicides. People committed suicide over their financial instability, their divorces. I've already heard of one that's happened recently in Toronto. Somebody committed suicide. I don't want the human misery, the divorces, the kids that are affecting everything. But houses will sell, and I am going to be very, very blunt. I want my share. If somebody's going to sell them, I want my share. I want you to get your share. So now this data is supported by the same data from the Toronto Real Estate Board. And I just did this seminar for Vancouver. It's exactly the same thing. As prices came down, volume of sales went up. Look at this. In 1981, mortgage rates hit 21.46. If you had my own personal mortgage went from 6 and something percent. It came up for renewal in 1981. I ended up, because they knew me and liked me and I did a lot of business, I got 19% as a favor. I went from 6 and something to 19%. And that was a bonus deal. 2021. Unemployment in 1981 was 13% in Canada. And it was unbelievable how bad things were. And guess what, ladies and gentlemen, and fellow realtors? Guess what happened at the worst time in the history of our modern real estate? Houses sold. Not just a few houses, lots of houses. Because I want you to get this through into your heads that economists never factor in one big thing. The desire to own a home is greater than the reality facing them. The mortgage rate's 21%, so they got vendors to take back discount mortgages or whatever. The unemployment, well, as long as they were working, they were going to buy a house. And if they were tight, they rented out the basement and everything else. People's desire to buy a house is greater than the reality of any economist. And that is a given. So here's Toronto stats. Same thing. Look at this, 81. The minute that the market crashed, where's 1990s here? Here we go. 1990, right here, if you can see my arrow, went from 26. The market crashes. They went from 26,000, 27,000, over 10,000 more houses sold right away. By the way, it shows here it took 10 years for the market to come back. But here's the other bonus. Look at the bottom of my page. As the market goes down, if the market goes down, there's less realtors. People leave the business. So there's more volume and less realtors. Come on, ladies and gentlemen. What more could you ask for? Volume and less realtors? That's phenomenal. I'm going to get my share. It's that simple. So let's look at this. I'm going to take a listing. You're going to take a listing. You have three choices, Mr. and Mrs. Price, when you list your house. You can either be on the market, in the market, or ahead of the market. So that's your three choices. And they look at you and go, what do you mean? Well, on the market, I'll take it at any price there is, and that is going to be called an expired listing. Ladies and gentlemen, nobody but a fool takes an on-the-market listing. In the market means everybody's asking 656, 635, up to 650, 625, 615. You want to be in there, you got to be in the low sixes, that's fine. But if you want to really sell and be ahead of the market, if everybody's around the six figure, you should be at 595 or at 6 even. Because you're the leader, you're the one that's going to sell first. You're ahead of the market. And that is where I try to price every single listing I've got. I have never taken an on-the-market listing, ever. And I won't. And the reason I'm going to get into that in a few minutes is the costs of taking a listing today are outrageous. So not only, Some of you are Mike Ferry people, some of you aren't. There's Buffini, whatever. I'm not a great fan, but Mike Ferry's, they say old school. No, he isn't. Pardon me. Mike Ferry's hard school. And Mike Ferry basically says to people, like he teaches us to say to people, Mr. and Mrs. Price, not only am I here for the job interview to become your realtor, I'm also here to decide if I want to accept to take your listing and be your realtor. It's a two-edged sword. And I turn around, I walk away. And I just, I think a walk-away tolerance is a good thing to have. Here's a prediction of what could be coming. Tons and tons of for sales on the market, and that's very possible. So here's the thing, your CMA, a listing that's priced right in or on the market, pardon me, in or ahead of the market, not on the market, is sold. I need money in the bank. I can't go to the bank with a listing that's not sold, but I can once the deal's closed. In turn, why do we make such bad valuations? Because this is a new market. We're too optimistic. Look at mortgage rates were 21.46. Unemployment was 13%. The newspapers, every newspaper was, if it bleeds, it leads, gloom and doom. It was horrible. It was in the media. And every day we had to wake up in the morning and go, good morning. It's a great day to sell real estate. And we had to be that agent. You've got to be that person. And we are too optimistic sometimes because our optimism gets in the way of realism. You've got to be realistic about the pricing. So here's some of the stuff. Your CMA is so important today. If you do not have a good CMA, you are really playing, you don't have the right tools to do the business. Use quality paper. By the way, I've tried every variation of how to do a listing presentation, and I am using Kodak paper, and yes, I'm doing a booklet, and yes, I'm leaving it with them, and yes, I've done PowerPoints and everything else. It depends on who my clients are. If they're older, more traditional people, I'm leaving a booklet. If they're younger and everything, I do a PowerPoint. I have an older computer that I carry just for listing presentations. The only thing on it, is PowerPoint. And why do I have that computer? Because the screen is huge. So when I'm sitting there, it's great. I've got the little clicker and I can do that. Now, I have to deal with solds, expireds, and everything else. Here's something else. I came up to Barrie. I was looking for an SUV, and I came to all the auto dealers, and I went to somebody, and at no time did the guy ever say to me, by the way, I want to come into my kiosk. I want to show you all the awards I've won and what number I am, and here's all about me. The first time I met the guy says, Barrie, that's great. I'm happy you're here. What are your needs? What is your budget? Why do you want this vehicle? What are you going to use it for? Any idea of how many kilometers a year? I mean, this guy qualified me. He was very professional. You don't want that one, you want this one. And I did buy a second vehicle for business, an SUV, that is a secondhand, that it's fabulous. And the guy never once, I don't know his status. We walk in with, I won this award. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're a man in an office that's predominantly got women in it, and you leave the toilet seat down, you will win an award. Winning an award in real estate is one of the easiest things to get. I mean, they give you an award for showing up. So who cares about our awards? Do I put a little bit at the end about at my CMA about who I am a little bit? Yeah, a little bit about me at the end, but it's not a brag book. So, oh, by the way, this is very important. Don't do appraisals. This is an aside. RICO insurance, our insurance for E&O does not cover you at all for anything to do with valuation, a letter where it's for financing purposes. By the way, there is no such thing as a letter of opinion of value. The courts have ruled that anytime you open your mouth and give a value, you have given an appraisal. So that this is a letter of opinion. No, it's not. It's a valuation. And I put on every page of a CMA when I do it, at the bottom, no third-party use. In other words, if I'm coming there because they're thinking of divorcing, and they're not going to take it to the bank to get a mortgage on my appraisal. It says no third-party use. It's for them. And my covering letter says that it is intended solely for them. Okay? Appraisal facts. Here's the deal. Nobody can buy a sold house. That's number one. You can't buy a sold house. And this is where appraisers get into a lot of trouble with making mistakes on appraisal. They predicate everything about the future or the current on past tense. Sold. It's past tense. Number two, expiries are very important, and current listings are your competition. Let me just say this to you. Those of you that are watching this, can you go out today and buy gold at yesterday's price? Maybe it has stayed level for 2 days. But can you buy a stock at the bargain price it was a couple of days ago because it's gone up because you want to? Or can you buy a commodity because if the price has gone up, well, 3 days ago it was at that price. So that's what's wrong with using solds. It's historic. I don't care if it was yesterday. It's historic. It happened yesterday. I'm going to do a very quick exercise. If you're listening right now and you've sold a home that hasn't closed yet, and you've got a young, let's just do it atypical. You've got a young couple, they bought their first home, they're really happy, and they're closing, let's say, another 30 days. And they've paid $500,000. And I come along and I say to them, I want to give you $500,000 not to close the deal. They'll go, why? Well, what's in it for us? So I'll give you 510. That's not enough. 520? No. Wait a minute. I'll give you $30,000 to buy your offer, sign your offer. 30,000 more, 40,000, 50,000. No matter what the price is, it's not the 500 they paid, because the minute they pay 500, they're not going to resell it for 500 right away. They want a profit. So the sold is historic because you can't buy a sold house. But that's where appraisers make a huge mistake. Appraisal theory started in the 1930s in the Great Depression, and it hasn't really changed that much over the last decades, or almost a century. So here's like this. You should never list right, the sale will follow. You never want to be on the market. You only care about one thing and one thing only. You want your listing to turn into a sold. And sold right now is yesterday. Sold is past tense, it's historic. So let's talk about now. You're standing in front of a house and you're going to have to list it to sell it. You want to price it right. So here's the first thing I tell people. Mr. and Mrs. Price. When I put your property on the market, one of the greatest measures of the buyer appeal is how many people physically come to see the house. Now, today we're doing virtual tours and everything else, and yet we are having showings again. We can't do open houses, but I can measure my electronics. I can see how many people come in, how many views. In turn, we also know how many people phone me, how many realtors. I have a measurement of to some degree, large degree, of what the public interest is. And if there is nothing happening, then we have priced the house too high and we have to adjust it, because in the bottom line of everything in real estate, it doesn't matter what I say. It doesn't matter about anything more than this. The market speaks. At all times, the market speaks. By the way, I have those stickers in red on my covers of my listing presentation and on all my comps and everything. It says the market speaks. So it doesn't look like I'm coming in with my opinion of value. It is how I interpret the market, and the market speaks. So this is the biggest thing you've got to look at. If there's one takeaway from today that is very, very important. This is it. When my appraisers used to come to me, and I was still a commercial real estate broker besides being an appraiser. When the appraisers came to me with a problem, they would walk in and they'd show me all their comps. And they'd say, Barry, these are the comps. This is what's happening. I'm having trouble coming up with a final figure. The house doesn't quite conform. I don't have the perfect comps and everything else. And I used to get so frustrated that after about a year of this nonsense, I made a mandatory new form to add on to our appraisal form. And that was, I needed, before you start to look at what's sold, go on market and look at what's on the market now. So if you've got 34 houses in the subdivision, you have to look at those 34 houses and go, oh my goodness gracious, 34 similar houses, you know, all built by the same builder in the same subdivision, and there's only a little bit of variables. I got a problem. But if there's only 3 or 4 houses on the market, you've got a very good shot at getting your property sold. So your competition is so very, very important that should be your first thing you do when you start to do an appraisal and evaluation. Here's another point of reasoning. If there are a slew of properties, there's this 34, like I said, and they're all asking in the 6s, and some crazy person's asking 7, because some agent was too stupid not to just waste their money. In turn, how are you going to compete? If they haven't sold and they're in the market 40 days, 50 days, they've been relisted twice, always look and see the history of the listing, then you have to look and go, I have to price it in competition with the others. So that's your biggest takeaway. Start with your competition. A simple chart. I look at, here's one, you've got houses in the 800 range. The lowest one that's sold of all is 795. And then you start finding out, it didn't have a finished basement, the people treated it rough, it had terrible landscaping. Okay, fine, so you got to adjust that. Another one though sold for 810 and it wasn't a bad house, but you find out there was a relocation and the guy had to be out of town. The husband and wife had to leave to get to the new job, so they took a little bit of a haircut, fine. But you start looking, 835, 845, 850. This 920 is ridiculous, 850. So you're looking at these, and these are now on MLS. What would you price yours at? Well, if you want to be ahead of the market, obviously, right now, you're going to be better than a 795, 810. You know, you're going to look at this, the 810 one, they're moving out in a hurry. You know the motivation, you've asked. So you're probably going to be in the low 8s. And that's ahead of the market. If you want to be in the market, you can be up to 850. You see where I'm going? Let's look at expired. Expired isn't expired, it's rejected. It's a rejection. Buyers looked at these listings and said, we don't want them. I've rejected it. And if you see a lot of rejected, I love walking in when I can find them, because the most abundant ones in Toronto's right now in the last years have been in condos. And I can walk in with a lot of these and say, these have expired, and therefore you can't get these asking prices. But here's something else. If I go into I'm going to do a condo again because they're abundant. A condo is only a subdivision that's vertical, that's all. And if I look and I see there's only been 3 or 4 expired over the last year or so, that's not a big deal. That means it's a pretty good building, a good subdivision, whatever. So that's good. I have to look at the rejected. And here's what we found in the past. We found that prices, if they do drop, we may have to eventually go and say, oh, wow, we're going to go back to November or October of 2019 because it's equal to what's happening now. And in some cases, back in the 90s, we were going back 2 years even or more to go back and say we are comparing it to what was at that particular time, because those are the only comps that were the same price range and where the market is. I'm not going to get too much into this, but basically a lot of agents are afraid of greedy sellers. 52 years in real estate. And the beauty of getting older is I just turn to a seller and go, oh, great, just what we need, another greedy seller. I've had people go crazy on me when I say that. And I go, look, you're not being realistic, you're being greedy. And I'm sorry, I can't help you in your greed. The market speaks. The market doesn't allow for greed. And a lot of agents are la, 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 I'm going to take this listing and I'm going to work it and everything else. Or they don't do their homework. A lot of agents don't know anything. And oh my God, ladies and gentlemen, those of you in Barrie and Aurelia, Midland and Penetanguish, wherever you're listening to me right now, why am I constantly hearing the complaint, why are Toronto agents working in my backyard? I don't believe in going all over the map. I'm getting complaints from my friends in Ottawa that Toronto agents are coming up to Ottawa for a basic townhouse. I'm going, what? And the same thing in Windsor. I'm like, I'll be honest with you, I'm flabbergasted. I can't grasp it. Stay in your own backyard. How do you go about using, and we're talking about bracketing. How many true comparable sales are now on MLS? Get the best sales, what's expired, and if you can, don't go back more than a few months. If you have to, you will go back further. So here's bracketing. Bracketing is very simple. I want to hit the target. Ladies and gentlemen, there is absolutely no such thing as a precise market value. There is a range. If we go back to that $800,000 thing, somebody wants to live near their cousin, they pay $850. Somebody wants the school for their kid, they paid $75 because that's value to use. That's not market value, it's value to use. It's what they want. Then we've got somebody else who got a bargain. Somebody had a short closing, a fast closing, somebody negotiated furniture. There's no such thing. There's a market range. It could be anywhere from 810 to 850 for goodness sakes. But bracketing brings it in as tight as you can, but for motivation and terms of sale. And there's another factor that changes market value too. How good is the negotiation of the realtor? If it's just a matter of, well, it's multiple offers, send me an email, then it's just a matter of, you've got an auction going without standing there with a gavel in your hand. That's not real negotiation. That's just an auction on an email auction. But that may be coming to an end, by the way. I may get into that, maybe I won't. So here's a bracketing one. You've got a sales in a neighborhood. It's sold, the highest price ever sold was $1,025,000 recently, and the floor is $925,000. What you don't do is look at these and go, oh, the midpoint's about 970 something. You don't do that. You don't average it. Mind you, it could work in this case. You need a lot of sales. I don't care. I take the back of an envelope if I have to. I'm a visual person. And as a visual person, I'm not a mathematician. I'm not good at math. I'm good at arithmetic. Basic, primary 2 + 2 arithmetic. And I take this out and I just do a little simple graph. Now I do these in my word processing. I just take, you can do it in Word, WordPerfect, whatever. It's so fast to do a graph. And I can do a graph so quickly because I like to look at the data. And I see what things have sold for. I find out that this house, the Pico, there was a reason, it was unbelievable, at a backyard, out of a magazine and all this stuff. You've got to find out the reasons behind it. You phone other agents, you ask questions, why their listing got so high or why their listing got so low. A good agent, professional agent, cooperates and tells you. Other agents don't even give you the time of day. Well, at least you made the call. So we've also got to look at their factors that motivate people to sell, their urgency, their motivation. You know, nothing's worse than an older couple goes, oh, we're in no rush, you know, la, la, la. And you're sitting here, you roll your eyes, you go, okay. Days on market, very important, but not just that. You've also got to go to history. Has it been listed with, I'm looking at a listing right now that was on the market for a year and a half with 2 different brokers 5 times. And it only showed up with the 3 days sold at the end. And if I went into pure MLS data and looked at the last sale, it shows 3 days. Yeah, it took a year and a plus. It took, I think, 17 months and 2 different brokers and 5 different listings till eventually the last listing sold in 3 days. But if I didn't look back at the history, I would think it's, oh, look at that hot sale, 3 days. No, it took a year plus. How many times was it listed? And I always ask people, okay, we're in a new era now. We're in a new time. This is post-COVID, or well, we're still in COVID. We're in a different time now. I'm going to give you a piece of advice that has held up very well. When you walk in, come in with like a clipboard or whatever you come in with, old school, pen and pencil, and paper, and you sit and you go, okay, instead of saying, do you have a mortgage? By the way, you're going to have to start doing mortgage verification forms again. I think somebody's going to correct me here with AREA. Is it Form 216? I can't remember. Mortgage verification is very important because people, what's your mortgage? I don't remember. Who's it with? I don't remember. Some mortgage broker arranged a mortgage, they closed the deal, and they don't remember, and it's coming out of their account every month and they're not paying attention. It's so cavalier. What's your interest rate, everything else? You need mortgage verification. The other thing is, you have, instead of saying, what is your mortgage, turn around and say, how much is your mortgage? A little different. How much do you owe? Can I see your mortgage papers? Oh, now, when we're in that, are you in arrears in your realty taxes? Not how much are your realty taxes? Are you in arrears in your realty taxes? Are there any condo fees outstanding? Homeowners Association, I have that in there because I was doing some work in British Columbia for the last seminar I did. You also, and there are some homeowners associations I know, like Collingwood and places. Then I go in, look at, you're being candid with me. You're telling me you've got some problems with your mortgage. You've got some arrears with your taxes. How about your credit cards and stuff like that? Are they up to date or are you in arrear? Because now you're getting a financial pick. Well, you know, I'm being squeezed by visas after me, and you know, things have been bad. I had to close the business down, or my truck broke down. I'm a long distance trucker, And start asking those questions, folks. You'll get your motivation. So you turn around and say, Mr. and Mrs. Price, it's obvious here. You need someone who's going to help you, bail you out of this. And I'm here to help you. And that's what you do. You're there to help them. So start. Now here's MLS flaws. You go into the board and you start looking at average. I hate this thing about what is the real estate market, the average. There's no such thing. Because a semi in one part of town has a strata. It goes at a different market than a semi in another part of town, than a detached, than on water, not on water, on one road, not another road. It's all thrown into the pot. MLS data is broad. It goes from, look at Barrie. You've got a $7 million property in Campbell Bay, and you got something in Oro-Medonte that's sold for, nothing. And you average those, tell me what either one of them's worth on average. So it doesn't work. Averages don't work. My samplings are, I go in and work with if I'm doing a 2-story detached, I'm looking for 2-story detached in that area, and I trend the market in that neighborhood. It's local. MLS data should be local and specific to the house type. Make sense? Okay. Now, does competition influence your asking price? Yes, because if these properties are $1.2 million, $1 million, almost $1.2 million, over $1.1 million, and I'm down here and there's one just under $1 million, another one at $1 million, and I'm competing, I got to compete with number 3 and 4. That's very important. And by the way, I do bring charts like this to my listing presentations because these charts are simple to make. I can knock this chart off maybe in under 10 minutes. It's not a lot of time. It doesn't take much to do a nice chart. Oh, I can make it prettier in 15 minutes, but it doesn't take long. And what is the basis of valuation? You've got to have the same type of house, the same demographic area, and the same time period. That's how you look at your values of coming up with a market value, okay? So let's make you money. Let's go forward now as we get towards the meat and potatoes of this. how to use the listing as a sales tool and a selling tool. So this is actually came out of Barry. Oh, I did a seminar for your board maybe 15 years ago. And this became really, really important to me. I asked the question at the time, how many people here use a listing presentation? And I think it was almost 100 something people in the audience. We were at the Holiday Inn on Bayfield there. And I think that very few hands went up. Excuse me 1 second, I am taking a drink of water. So the first thing is, if most people aren't using a listing presentation, then you're ahead if you do. When I ask people how many, the top producers, and I've done this across North America, Canada, and the United States, at seminar after seminar, how many presentations do you have to go on and how many listings do you get to make a good living? And here's the deal. I'm not going to go through all of it. Top producers take, from every 10 appointments, they get anywhere from 7 out of 10 to 95. I've only seen 100%. Look, I've had a year, you've had a year, where every presentation you get. But average it out over the years you're in real estate. You don't get every presentation. And especially today when some of the cheap people that want to know, the first question is, what do you charge? So I don't deal with those people. If you're a good producing agent, you're going to go on 10 appointments and get about at least 7 out of 10. That depends on what market you're in, how good your presentation is. Yeah, I'm going to say this to you. I'm going to digress for a minute. During this downturn of COVID, I was home like you almost every single day for the first 6 weeks for sure. I never moved except to go for a walk. And every lunch I watched a YouTube video, and I was obsessed with listing presentations. I saw some brilliant ones. I saw some terrible ones. And I like to watch the terrible ones because I can see what mistakes that are made in how they handle themselves. They don't even know how to sit at the table and look at people and do a presentation. I saw a presentation the other day done. Somebody's using Zoom to do their listing presentation. It was brilliant. I'm trying to figure out how to do that to my advantage too. And I'm learning how to do that. A real great Zoom listing presentation. So this shows how much wasted time. Sorry. Here's what they teach you at AREA, and here's what they teach you in appraisal institutes and all the other. This is how you should do your grid. If I were to do this analysis for a listing, I just gave up a whole day almost. This is a hell of a lot of work, and I'm not doing it. This is what they teach you how to do a CMA. It's nonsense. We don't have to do this. But you should have at least looked at all these listings and done an analysis in your own head. And then what I do is I do walk in though with this, with file folders to my clients, and I go, this is what's been rejected. And I'm sorry about the dates. I should have updated this. So we look at the rejection, and your property can't be worth more than this. Here's the solds, Here's the current competition. And then I go through all that, and I say to people, by the way, here's a little map of everything. Now, I don't need to do this map. It's on Realtor CA. I can pump out that map. And today, the public knows about everything that's around you. There's Realtor CA. There's everything for sale. The public, if they're looking, as a matter of fact, the public today is so astute. How many times do you get a call from your client going, I really want you, what's the information about that house on Maple? And you go, what house on Maple? They're up at 1 in the morning looking at real estate porn. They're sitting there staring at real estate porn all the time. You're not even spending that, you're sleeping. They're looking at real estate. So here's what I do. Mr. and Mrs. Price, the rejected properties were between 529 to 569. Your house won't sell in that range. Historic or sold were 455 to 477. Prices have fallen, or I could say have risen 4% in the 6 months, and we'll adjust for that. Current competitive is 439.5 to 479. But note that the highest price, 479, will become expired and rejected. Based on everything I've given you, what do you think we should list your house for, your condo for? Do you think anybody's ever given me the answer? The answer is of course not, but I ask it every time. I love then to do a pregnant pause. I stop, I don't say a word. And I love when I've got a couple sitting in front of me, and I love when they look at each other and they go, oh my goodness, that's not what we were thinking or what our information was. And then I turn and I say the question, what did you think your house is worth? Because I've laid my cards on the table now. And this is where the dialogue gets really good. And I say, look, I'm sorry, I'm not the person that creates this. This is the market. The market is speaking to us, and this is what the market is telling us. And people will say, Barry, you're the professional. I hear this all the time. What do you think our house? Oh, Barry, it's crazy. We're not giving away our house. Well, you're not giving it away, but that's what the market says, and the market speaks. I am just the voice of the market. So stop wasting your time. If you're not in this area of 7, 8, 9, 90%, in other words, if you're going on presentations, you're not getting this 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10, 95%, you're wasting your time. It's a lot of money and time. Here's some of the common appraisal errors. Sales are not comparable. Sales are too old. They're too far away. Lack of marketability. Have you never seen a property that just, you don't know how it's going to sell? It's just terrible. By the way, I had a property, a hoarder's house, that was one of the worst I've ever had in my career. We stripped it down to the bare plywood and took out all the everything. There wasn't a sink or a toilet. Well, we put a new toilet in for convenience, but it was horrible. It took, we took out, I think it was 3.5 tons of stuff out of the house. It was the worst of the worst. And I actually put down, this house is a disaster. I did a flyer and I promoted it as a piece of crap. And I had 17 offers and sold it for over market value. So it depends how you market. White elephants. I did this seminar a few weeks ago in Vancouver, for Vancouver, on Zoom. And actually, this is a house I've been using for years because it's off Robson Street in Vancouver. I was walking one day in Vancouver, fell in love with this beautiful house that somebody must have come up in the 1890s from San Francisco, because this is a very San Francisco type of house, and built this house. And all I kept thinking when I took this picture was, how the hell do you appraise that house? It's so out of the ordinary for the neighborhood. How do you appraise it? And so I love these things. I look at white elephants all the time because I'm obsessed with, thank goodness I'm no longer an appraiser, because I used to get all these white elephants and I don't need them. There's one in Toronto that's very famous. They built this huge monster of a house all on a main street, not a main street, a busy feeder street, all around crappy 1940s bungalows. And it was a hard sell. So we've got oddballs. Here's an oddball house. You're going to say, Barry, that looks like a typical infill house somewhere. Really? Here it is in a 1950s neighborhood. Somebody wanted to go back to the old hood, so they built a house that was gorgeous for their own purposes in a streets like this. There was nothing around like it. And what are you going to do? How are you going to compare? Here's something, I don't care what city or town you're in Ontario, of size. If you're in a rural area, it's a little different. But if you're in a town, a city, or village, here's what I want you to do. And that is, when you have a property such as this, and there's nothing else like it, but you know, if this house was only in another neighborhood, I can price it because there's comps. The question then becomes, the light should go on and say, so if this house was in the better neighborhood, what's the difference between where the neighborhood is in and the neighborhood that's the better neighborhood? How do you look at it? If you're lucky, you go back to the basic house, the bungalow. Look at, if you're lucky, there's maybe some lot sales. They're doing infill. So you can go from one neighborhood to the other and go on pure data, the lot. So if this lot sold for 600,000 and a lot in the other area was 500,000, it gives you a percentage factor that you can apply to the house. It's not exact, it's not a science, but it gives you at least something to give you to hang your hat on. So I go back, this bungalow, I go to Sudbury and see this bungalow. I can go to Windsor and see this bungalow. These bungalows are all over Ontario. I look at the basic bungalow from one neighborhood to the other, and I see the difference of the price range, and I go, therefore, that neighborhood is 20% or 10% or 15% different or above or less than the other neighborhood. Therefore, I can take comps from that neighborhood, apply 10 or 15% and adjust them. Now, if it's a beautiful home and everything, I may have to adjust 20%. Instead, if everything shows me it's a 15% for the bungalow, the question is, why would I want to buy a beautiful home in a neighborhood where it's out of character for the neighborhood? So there's got to be a little more of a depreciation, a premium. So I play with it. It's not a science, folks. Anybody who tells you, you know what's a science in appraisal? Maybe industrial condos of 1,000 square feet when there's a whole bunch of them. Yeah, you can do that. But even in a high-rise apartment building, you know, every apartment has a different level, a different view. You know, there's so much, and the renovation. There's nothing that's truly comparable, especially in residential. And a condo is basically a vertical neighborhood. And we know that. And condos, isn't it funny? Some condos, no matter what, will be in demand. Other condos don't do well. Some of them, it's maintenance fees. I have one right now. It's a gorgeous condo. The maintenance fees are outrageous, and I'm not getting a lot of action. I've seen twin towers built by Minto, let's say, side by side, and or because of management or mismanagement, they have two different maintenance fees, and one sells better than the other, or the board did better maintenance. So we got to look at that. So let's look at this. If you're a proactive full service agent, what does it cost you, not including staging, to take a listing? And now in the COVID situation, there is more to this today because we've added virtual 3D tours that are not cheap. And you're going, you're going to the house and you're doing a walkthrough tour as well. Somebody has to hold the camera and somebody has to edit the thing. Yeah, if you're good, you can do your own, but what's your time worth? So let's look at the next slide, okay? You want to make 150,000 this year. 150. It's a good number. It's a beautiful number. Most Canadians would kill to make 150,000. You work 3,000 hours a year as a realtor. Therefore, you're making $50 an hour. That includes when you average out. If a lawyer called you and said, we need you as a professional, come and testify or something, you're not charging $50 an hour, you're charging more. But you have to average it out for the 3,000 hours of when you're licking envelopes, playing around with MLS, doing stuff like that. If you take an overpriced listing and it's 60 days on the market, you've got your initial showings, open houses, well, now we don't, telephone, everything, you're putting in about 30 hours. That listing is costing you $1,500 of your time. That's not even, we haven't done any photographs, we haven't done 3D, we haven't done a video. Ladies and gentlemen, if you think you're gonna be under $2,000 today to take a listing in the market, and I don't care how cheap the listing is, when you factor in your hours, you've got a lot of investment in a listing. Mike Ferry's right. Mr. and Mrs. Price, not only am I being interviewed to get the job as your realtor, I have to see if I want to be your realtor. It's a great thing. So what's the listing cost you? And why do so many agents take an overpriced listing? And here's the thing, do you want this to happen? I can't afford this. You can't afford this. That's how I perceive a bad listing. I honestly have the visualization of this in my mind. Do I want to burn this money? So where are we heading? This is this morning's newspaper. This morning, now, current, look at the date, Wednesday, June 24th. House prices decline up to 12%. Ladies and gentlemen, I lived through 3 downturns. One of the biggest causes of a real estate downturn was media. The more the media pumps out this stuff, the more the public comes to believe it. And the more that you will see these headlines, it will influence our market strongly. I don't like to see this headline because when I see it, it only hurts us, it hurts sellers, and it distorts the market. Because when you get into this article, you see that the market hasn't truly declined. It's a CMHC forecast. But that's not what the headline says, and that's what the public sees. So this is this morning's newspaper. I got it at 6 o'clock this morning. This is as fresh as you can get. So we're wrapping it up. I want you to think about this, what I said. When you go do your marketing now, and you're going to do your CMA, I should say, and you're looking at how to market a listing and get the listing priced right, look at the competition over everything else. Competition, competition, competition. Then go look at your solds. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to look at this lady. This lady gets up as a professional at the same time every day. This lady puts on a proper uniform. She's groomed. She goes to her place of employment. She sits down and she takes out a checklist. She knows exactly where she's going, what she's going to do for every hour of the day, and she does it. And she has to fly from Toronto to Montreal. She can stick her head out the window and look at the 401, or she can turn around and do it with her eyes closed because she's done it so many times. But she doesn't. She does it professionally every single time. With us, what's our flight plan? Is a CMA and a proper listing presentation. 2, always wake up and do the same routine every day. 3, dress well. 4, if anybody here that flies, if you know when you're flying, if you are a flyer, I'm not anymore, I've tried to fly. If you're taking flying lessons or fly, you get up there and things happen, you deviate, but you still arrive at your destination. You have to adjust your flight plan. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. And I'm going to, I hope there's questions. And at this moment, I'm going to stop the share. And are there questions? We've got only 35 people on today. And the reason that we've got only 35, I understand that people got knocked out because the internet's down in parts of Southern Barrie. Even though your pricing may not have many recent sales due to COVID, do the overrun and play role establishing trends. I'm listening in Midland, there's an agent in the city who now wants to make a lowball, chasing a commission check. All right, 2 different questions. Even though a neighborhood, you're in a neighborhood, I want to understand the question. Your pricing may not have many recent sales. Do the overall stats? Yes, but again, I come back to the stats. How can, if you're a detached house, why are semi-detached houses into the averages? Why are freehold town, like there's too much stuff in there. Why is the shack waterfront and non-waterfront into the stats? Stats, I don't not use them because I will when I have to, but I'm not crazy about them. I dig into the material and I get my own stats. And it's a lot of work sometimes. It really is, but you got to do it. I have a listing in Midland. There's an agent in the city who wants to make a lowball. So what? You know, I have, yesterday a friend of mine phones me. She's taking a very exclusive listing, $2.5 million. Good for her. And I said to her, so blah, blah, blah. She's, my seller told me he won't look at any lowball offers. So I said, you made a mistake. I said, what's that? And I said, you have to look at this and say to the seller, when you take a listing, I'm sorry, but even if somebody gives me $100,000 offer, I have to present it. First of all, it's law. I have to let you know about every offer. That's not law that you have to present it. You have to just pick up the phone and say, by the way, you got a lowball offer, but at least that's a presentation. So never apologize. What for? I mean, a lowball's a lowball. Anybody else? Any other questions? No sound. Okay. All right, sorry. We should do that. You know what we should do? We should get a mime coming in and do this. Try closing and restart. Amazing. Oh, thank you. Anybody else? Anyone else? A question here? Now, I'm sorry that people's internet is down. You are going to share this video, I understand.
Yes, I am.
Okay, good. Are we good? Are we finito? Are we covered everything?
I think so.
Okay, I'll say this in closing then, okay? The last thing I want to say to you is come back to what I said at the beginning. If we fall off a cliff, if the market goes bad, I'll tell you this. Again, I come back to what I said during the presentation. At the worst time in the history of my 52 years, houses sold. They sold all over Ontario, all over Canada. And the reason is people's desire is greater than our reality. And those of you that are north of Toronto today that are watching this, ladies and gentlemen, you should be marketing like crazy. Look what I can get you here in Midland or in Penetang. I always say people move to Midland because they can't spell Penetanguishene. But I would turn around and say, look at what you can get for this money here, and you can bank the balance. I mean, you got so many opportunities right now to do this, and I envy you. It's a great time to be in real estate, and I look forward to the future. So thank you again to the board. Always a pleasure, and it's great to do a presentation without wearing long pants, and a pleasure to be here. So thank you.